The House Oversight Committee chamber buzzed with electric anticipation as former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi settled into the witness chair. Bright overhead lights glimmered against her perfectly styled blonde hair and the sharp navy lines of her tailored suit. She took a steady breath and carefully arranged her stack of documents, every motion deliberate. For weeks, Bondi had dominated headlines with her fiery allegations targeting several Democratic lawmakers. Today was her moment to deliver, the day she promised the country undeniable proof. But seated directly across the table was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, composed, unflinching, and laser-focused. The freshman Democrat from Texas, celebrated for her razor-sharp legal mind and calm, incisive questioning style, had spent weeks quietly preparing for this confrontation. The air felt thick with tension as the cameras zoomed in. Crockett's eyes met Bondi's with quiet intensity. In front of her rested a thick binder neatly labeled Evidence. Just before walking in, Bondi had told reporters, "I'm bringing receipts today. Congresswoman Crockett and her friends have been deceiving the American people. And I'll prove it right here." Her words exploded across conservative media, instantly trending on social platforms. But inside the committee room, the energy began to shift. A subtle unease that even Bondi seemed to sense. Crockett leaned slightly toward her microphone, her voice smooth but commanding. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like Ms. Bondi to know that I've brought my own receipts." She tapped her folder gently, the faintest smile curving her lips. "And I have a feeling what happens next will surprise America." The room froze. A ripple of tension moved across the benches. A flicker of doubt passed through Bondi's expression. Republican members exchanged uncertain glances while Democrats settled back, recognizing that something remarkable was about to unfold. Then the gavel struck. Chairman James Lanford called the hearing to order. Bondi straightened her papers, but the confidence behind her eyes had softened. Crockett remained utterly still, her small smile unwavering. Everyone in that chamber could feel it. This wasn't a routine hearing. It was a political showdown destined to dominate the news cycle for weeks to come. Before diving deeper into this dramatic confrontation, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. The two women facing each other couldn't have come from more contrasting worlds, a difference that made their clash almost cinematic. Pam Bondi, Florida's first female attorney general, had served from 2011 to 2019 and built her name as a powerful Republican voice. She was no stranger to controversy or cameras. Known for her polished image, sharp media instincts, and close ties to conservative circles, Bondi became a fixture on cable news, known for her biting critiques of Democratic leadership. At 56, she exuded the confidence of a seasoned political operator. The blonde hair, designer suits, and composed on-screen presence had become her brand. In recent weeks, Bondi had made explosive allegations about supposed financial misconduct by several Democrats, Crockett among them. She accused them of misusing campaign funds and taking improper donations. Conservative media ran with the story nonstop, despite the absence of corroborating evidence. "These Democrats think they're untouchable," she had declared on a talk show. "Tomorrow, I'll show proof that'll shake Washington." Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett, the 42-year-old freshman representative from Texas's 30th District, embodied a new generation of political leadership. A former criminal defense attorney and civil rights advocate, she'd risen from humble roots. A relentless fighter for justice reform and voting rights long before she stepped into Congress. Her unfiltered, plain-spoken communication style and legal precision earned her both admirers and critics. But no one doubted her intellect. Unlike Bondi's meticulously curated television persona, Crockett projected authenticity. Her bright suits, expressive tone, and quiet confidence signaling someone who was entirely comfortable in her own skin. What many opponents underestimated, however, was her extraordinary attention to detail. She was a lawyer who won through facts, not theatrics. As Bondi toured studios and primetime panels, Crockett remained silent, issuing only a single, poised statement. "I look forward to addressing these claims in the proper setting, with facts, not rhetoric." Behind the scenes, She was assembling evidence, tracing financial records, and preparing a counterattack so precise it could leave no room for doubt. Her silence wasn't avoidance, it was calculation. For both women, the stakes couldn't have been higher. For Bondi, this hearing was a shot at restoring her national prominence, maybe even launching another political run. But that dream now hinged entirely on proving her accusations true. For Crockett, the moment was deeply personal. Her credibility, her integrity, and her future rested on the truth. When Chairman Lanford struck the gavel again, the hearing officially began. Today's session will examine allegations of campaign finance irregularities, he announced. Our first witness is former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who has requested to present evidence of potential violations. Bondi rose. Voice steady and practiced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past several weeks, I've identified troubling financial patterns among certain members of this committee. Today, I intend to present documentation suggesting possible breaches of campaign finance laws and ethical standards. As she spoke, Crockett remained still, jotting quiet notes, her expression unreadable. Then Bondi made her move. I've discovered irregularities in Congresswoman Crockett's financial reports, she declared, clicking through slides projected on the large monitor behind her. These records indicate possible coordination with outside groups and misuse of campaign funds. Republicans leaned in. Democrats watched warily. The tension was palpable. Ladies and gentlemen, Bondi continued, the American people deserve transparency from their elected officials. Her voice grew stronger with each statement, pointing toward highlighted figures and color-coded graphs. As you can see here, she gestured toward the screen, these 5 separate donations were all deposited into Congresswoman Crockett's account within 48 hours, a pattern that raises serious questions. Congressman Mark Watkins, a conservative from Ohio, interjected, Ms. Bondi, would you say this pattern appears coincidental or something deliberate? Bondi didn't miss a beat. In my experience, Congressman, such patterns almost always signal coordination, often designed to skirt campaign finance laws. The words hung heavy in the air. Crockett, still calm, kept her eyes on her notes, betraying only the faintest smile, a look that said she was waiting for the perfect moment. After nearly 20 minutes, Chairman Lanford turned toward her side. The committee now recognizes Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for questioning. Crockett adjusted her microphone. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, she began, her tone cool and steady. Ms. Bondi, I appreciate your commitment to transparency. Before I respond to your claims, may I clarify something first? When was the last time you personally practiced election law? The question seemed simple. It wasn't, Bondi hesitated. Well, my responsibilities as Attorney General were quite broad. I oversaw... Crockett interrupted gently, yet firmly. I didn't ask what you oversaw, Ms. Bondi. I asked when you last practiced election law. A date will suffice. A visible flicker of discomfort crossed Bondi's face. I haven't practiced election law directly, but I have... So never, Crockett stated plainly. You've never practiced election law. Thank you for clarifying. Without raising her voice, she continued. Are you familiar with the Federal Election Commission's coordination rules under 11 CFR 109.21? Bondi blinked. I'm familiar with the general principles. It's a yes or no question, Crockett pressed. Are you familiar with those specific regulations? The ones you based your accusations on? Bondi hesitated. I'd have to review them. I'll take that as a no, Crockett said, her voice like silk over steel. Allow me, then, to explain what those regulations actually say. And with that, Jasmine Crockett took control of the hearing. Slide by slide, she dismantled Bondi's claims. Where Bondi had used bold red arrows and exaggerated charts, Crockett displayed verifiable records, every date, every number, every transaction matched against federal law. Slowly, the foundation of Bondi's argument began to crumble in full view of the cameras. By the time Crockett finished her methodical presentation, the contrast was undeniable. One woman had come armed with rhetoric, the other with facts, and everyone in that room, from the staffers to the chairman to the watching millions at home, could see exactly who was telling the truth. Miss Bond, She said, "The donations you flagged as suspicious were part of a public online fundraising drive involving over 3,000 donors. These contributions weren't secret. They were advertised, tracked, and publicly reported. That's not misconduct. That's what effective digital fundraising looks like." A murmur spread through the room. Republican aides huddled over papers, whispering. Others averted their gaze. Sensing the tide turning, Congressman Watkins tried to interrupt. "Congresswoman Crockett, these technicalities don't change the fact that I'm sorry, Congressman," Crockett interjected firmly. "I believe I still have 7 minutes, and I intend to use them." Turning back to Bondi, she continued, "Now about the expenditures you flagged on page 27 of your report." For the next 5 minutes, Crockett's cross-examination grew sharper. Her mastery of election law, her methodic logic, and her control of the room became undeniable. With every question, Bond's earlier composure faded. She fidgeted, glancing nervously toward her Republican colleagues, as though searching for help that wasn't coming. Then the hearing took an unexpected turn. "Miss Bondi," Crockett began evenly, while preparing for today's session, "my staff and I noticed something interesting. You spent a great deal of time on national television discussing these allegations before ever presenting them here under oath. Would you be willing to tell this committee who funded your investigation?" Bondi froze. "My work was entirely independent. That wasn't my question." Crockett cut in, her tone firm now. "Who paid for this investigation? Who financed the research behind your claims?" Bondi's expression hardened. "I don't see the relevance, but in that moment the balance of power had already shifted. I believe it's extremely relevant to understand potential motivations." Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett replied firmly, her tone cutting through the tense atmosphere. "But let me be more direct. Did you at any point receive funding either directly or indirectly from an organization called Freedom Financial Alliance?" The name hit the room like a shockwave. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Committee members exchanged uncertain glances while several Republicans suddenly focused intently on their notepads. Pam Bondi's face flushed. "I don't believe I can disclose all funding sources due to confidentiality," she muttered. Crockett's eyes narrowed slightly as she reached for her folder. "Mr. Chairman," she said calmly, "I'd like to enter Exhibit A into the record. These are verified bank transfers showing payments from Freedom Financial Alliance to Bondi Consulting Group totaling $475,000 over the past 3 months. Gasps filled the hearing room as Crockett's steady voice continued. "And I'd also like to enter Exhibit BM documentation proving that Freedom Financial Alliance receives the majority of its funding from Meridian Strategies, a political action committee currently under federal investigation for campaign finance violations." The audience erupted in whispers and murmurs. Chairman Lanford struck his gavel repeatedly, calling for order, but the shift in momentum was undeniable. What had started as Bondi's big moment to accuse others had completely reversed. Her own financial connections were now under the spotlight. As the noise subsided, Crockett looked directly at Bondi, her voice steady and deliberate. "Miss Bondi, would you like to revise any of your earlier testimony? Given these financial relationships you failed to disclose to this committee?" The tension was unbearable. Every eye in the room turned to Bondi, whose normally polished composure was cracking. She glanced toward her Republican allies for support, but most were whispering with aides or anxiously reviewing the new evidence. Bondi finally spoke, her voice unsteady. "These financial records are taken out of context. The consulting work was unrelated to this investigation." Crockett's expression didn't change. She calmly pulled out another folder. "I thought you might say that," she replied evenly. "That's why I'd like to introduce Exhibit C." The clerk quickly distributed copies as a staff member projected the new document on the large screen. It was an email from Peter Rawlings, CEO of Freedom Financial Alliance, addressed directly to Bondi. Crockett began reading aloud. "Pam, we need something concrete on Crockett before the midterms. Polling shows she's gaining influence. The additional $300,000 in funding depends on actionable allegations by June. Make it happen." The chamber erupted. Reporters scrambled to the exits to file breaking updates, their cameras flashing. Chairman Lanford's gavel struck the table several times before the noise finally died down. When silence returned, Crockett's voice carried an edge of precision. "Miss Bondi," she said, Would you like to explain to this committee how your independent investigation aligns with this directive from your financial backers? Bondi reached for her water glass, her hand trembling. That email is I can't confirm its authenticity. It's a distraction from the real issue. Crockett didn't flinch. That document was obtained through legal discovery in a separate case, she explained. Its authenticity has already been verified by forensic analysts. But if you'd like, I can request that this committee issue a subpoena to Mr. Rawlings so he can testify under oath. Several Republican members shifted in their seats, visibly uneasy. Congressman Watkins, Bondi's strongest supporter earlier in the hearing, now stared at the projected email, his expression grim and silent. But Crockett wasn't done. She turned another page. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to introduce Exhibit D into the record. Miss Bondi's travel logs from April through May. These records confirm 3 in-person meetings with Meridian Strategies executives at their Arlington headquarters. Chairman Lanford, now visibly uncomfortable, nodded wordlessly. Miss Bond, Crockett continued, you came here accusing me of campaign finance violations without evidence. Yet these documents prove you've been secretly paid nearly $500,000 by organizations under federal investigation to fabricate these claims. The room went silent. Crockett's final words struck like a hammer. What we are witnessing here isn't oversight, she said, her voice resonating across the chamber. It's political mercenary work disguised as public accountability. The Democratic members burst into applause while reporters raced to capture the moment. Cameras zoomed in on Pam Bondi, whose face had turned pale and expression vacant, her once powerful image collapsing under the weight of undeniable evidence. Her carefully built reputation was crumbling in real time, and the entire nation was watching it unfold. When Pam Bondi finally found her voice, the confidence that once carried her testimony was gone. Congresswoman, you're twisting facts to create a false narrative about my work, she protested weakly. Jasmine Crockett remained calm, holding the email in her hand. The facts speak for themselves, Miss Bondi, she replied. This isn't about me twisting anything. This is about you getting caught. Turning to the full committee, Crockett's tone grew stronger. Colleagues, what we've witnessed here today is exactly what's poisoning our political system. False allegations spread by partisan media, funded by dark money groups, and designed not to challenge policy, but to destroy people's reputations. Then, in an unexpected moment of grace, Crockett turned back toward Bondi. Her tone softened. Miss Bondi, I don't question your intelligence or your experience. What saddens me is seeing them used this way. You once served as Florida's top law enforcement officer, sworn to seek justice. But today, instead of revealing truth, you've tried to bury it. The hearing room fell completely silent. Even Chairman Lanford seemed lost for words, trying to rescue the sinking session. Congressman Watkins spoke up. Mr. Chairman, while these revelations about Miss Bond are troubling, I believe we should refocus on the original purpose of this hearing. With respect, Congressman, Crockett interjected firmly. The original purpose was to examine campaign finance violations, and that's exactly what we're doing, just not the ones Miss Bondi intended. Laughter rippled through the gallery before being silenced by the gavel. But the moment had already landed. What had started as Bondi's big day was now Crockett's complete triumph. Desperate to regain control, Bondi raised her voice. This is a coordinated attempt to distract from legitimate issues. My funding sources don't change the data I've presented. Actually, they do, Crockett countered smoothly, because those so-called patterns exist only in a narrative you were paid to create. She turned to the clerk. Let's enter Exhibit E into the record, the official FEC audit of my campaign from last quarter. It found 0 irregularities and full compliance with all laws. She slid the audit across the table. This report was completed 3 weeks before you began making your accusations on television. Ms. Bondi, meaning you continued spreading claims you already knew were false. The chairman glanced at his watch, realizing the damage was beyond repair. We'll take a 15-minute recess to review these documents, he announced. As members filed out. The cameras captured 2 unforgettable images. Jasmine Crockett, calmly organizing her notes and accepting quiet congratulations from colleagues, and Pam Bondi, motionless at the witness table, surrounded by aides frantically whispering as her once polished case and possibly her career collapsed before her eyes within minutes of the recess. Clips of Crockett's methodical takedown spread like wildfire online. The hashtag Bondi exposed hit #1 nationally, followed closely by Crockett takedown and receipts brought. Millions watched the moment Crockett revealed the explosive email. The clip surpassed 5 million views in just 1 hour. When the hearing resumed, the energy in the room had shifted completely. Several Republican members had quietly left, unwilling to face the political fallout. Chairman Lanford, visibly uncomfortable, cleared his throat in light of new information, suggesting potential conflicts of interest. The committee will postpone further testimony from Ms. Bondi pending review. The statement was diplomatic, but the meaning was clear. Pam Bondi's credibility was destroyed, and the committee wanted distance. As Bondi exited the chamber, chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as aides formed a human shield around her. The woman who had entered that morning with poise and confidence now moved quickly, head down, ignoring shouted questions. "No comments at this time," her spokesperson repeated mechanically. The contrast to her recent triumphant TV appearances could not have been more striking. Meanwhile, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stepped into the rotunda to address the media. Calm and composed, surrounded by supportive colleagues, she spoke clearly. "Today wasn't about defending myself. It was about defending the truth. When political attacks are funded by undisclosed donors, they aren't about accountability. They're about manipulation." A CNN correspondent called out, "Congresswoman, when did you first learn about Miss Bond's financial connections?" "My team began investigating after her third TV appearance, repeating the same baseless claims," Crockett answered. "As a former defense attorney, I've learned, when someone comes after you this aggressively, it's usually worth examining their motives." The political aftershocks spread fast across Washington. Major news outlets that had previously given Bondi airtime now faced backlash for promoting allegations that turned out to be unfounded. Several networks released careful statements promising to review guest vetting practices. Corporate code for "we got caught pushing baseless claims." By evening, the entire story had evolved far beyond Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi. It had become a national conversation about political accountability, media responsibility, and the growing influence of dark money in American politics. News outlets across the country were running special reports analyzing how unverified allegations often move from hidden political donors to friendly media platforms, eventually being accepted as fact without proper scrutiny on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow called it a rare moment when the curtain was finally pulled back on how political character attacks are manufactured in modern America. Over on Fox News, the tone was noticeably restrained. Brief mentions of the heated exchange before moving quickly to other topics. Yet, even some conservative commentators admitted that Bondi had clearly been unprepared for Crockett's detailed counter-evidence. For Pam Bondi, the fallout was swift and devastating. Within 24 hours, 3 major TV appearances were quietly canceled. Political allies who had once amplified her claims suddenly backed away, insisting they were only repeating what a former attorney general had alleged. Behind the scenes, journalists began investigating the groups Crockett had exposed. The next morning, the Wall Street Journal published a bombshell report on Meridian Strategies, linking the organization to several similar smear campaigns that had targeted prominent Democrats over the past year. This appears to be a coordinated system designed to launder partisan attacks through credible-looking intermediaries, the report concluded, quoting campaign finance experts alarmed by what they called the industrialization of political character assassination. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's national profile skyrocketed. Media invitations poured in. Her social media following tripled in just 2 days, and political analysts praised her composure and preparation. Inside Washington, senior Democratic leaders took notice. "What impressed me most," said House Minority Leader Hockey Jeff, "wasn't just that she defended herself. It was how she turned a defensive moment into an opportunity to expose a much bigger truth. That's rare political skill." 3 days after the confrontation, Crockett appeared on 60 Minutes, giving her first major interview since the viral hearing. When asked whether she had expected the exchange to unfold as dramatically as it did, she smiled. "I didn't go in to embarrass Miss Bondi," she said calmly. "I went in to defend the truth with evidence. But as a lawyer, I've learned when someone makes serious accusations, you must examine both their evidence and their motives. The interviewer pressed further. Some Republicans are calling this a coordinated ambush. Crockett didn't hesitate. The only thing coordinated, she replied, was the campaign against me. I just came prepared with facts, not fiction. If that's considered an ambush in today's politics, it says more about the system than about me. For Pam Bondi, the days that followed were grim. After nearly a week of silence, she released a short statement through a spokesperson, saying she would step back from public commentary to focus on private legal work. Political insiders immediately recognized the phrase as code for a forced retreat, at least for now. Then came the biggest consequence of all. The Federal Election Commission (FEC) announced a formal investigation into Freedom Financial Alliance and Meridian Strategies based on the financial evidence Crockett had presented in the hearing. Legal experts warned this could lead to criminal charges, not just embarrassment. As the dust settled, commentators across the political spectrum agreed. The Crockett-Bondi hearing would go down in history as both a masterclass in political preparation and the cautionary tale about underestimating your opponent. The episode underscored a crucial truth about modern politics in an age of viral misinformation. Having real receipts still matters. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just defended herself. She had set a new blueprint for fighting back against organized smear campaigns. Supporters flooded social media with memes celebrating her performance. Hashtags like Ask Crockett Receipts and Respect the Facts became rallying cries, appearing on T-shirts, mugs, and TikToks. Fans compared her strategic precision to a chess grandmaster in Congress. But perhaps the most significant change wasn't online. It was in Washington itself. Behind closed doors, journalists, strategists, and producers began to change their approach. Several planned exposés on political figures were suddenly delayed for further fact-checking. TV networks quietly instructed staff to vet claims more carefully. One political reporter dubbed this new caution the Crockett effect. For now, the cost of spreading unverified political allegations had become much higher. As for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she quietly returned to her legislative work, declining most interview requests and focusing on her district. But those around her noticed something different, a new level of respect. Even from political opponents, she had demonstrated intelligence, poise, and the courage to stand firm under pressure, traits admired even across party lines. The question in every political strategist's mind was the same. What would Jasmine Crockett do next? Would she leverage her newfound influence into a higher leadership role, or continue building her reputation one legislative victory at a time? One thing was certain. Anyone planning to come after her again would think twice. Behind her calm demeanor now stood a reputation for turning defense into devastating offense, and the entire political establishment knew it. Thank you for watching our coverage of this extraordinary political showdown. If you enjoyed this detailed breakdown of how Jasmine Crockett masterfully turned the tables on Pam Bondi, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our future deep dives into Washington's most dramatic confrontations. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Pam Bondi can recover from this, or has this hearing changed her career forever? We'll see you in our next political analysis.